Things are about to get really hairy with Canadian mainstream media this week. I can guarantee you right now they are held up in planning rooms trying to figure out what coverage is going to look like by the end of this week when the US and Canada fail to reach an agreement. Now, let me ask you a serious question. Why does the media in this country fall all over itself to praise Mark Carney? Why are they calling a 12-week vacation strategic rest? And why are they downplaying Canada's total failure to secure this deal with the US on trade? They're also spending so much time giving attention to this damn longest ballot thing as well. Why is almost every legacy media outlet in this country acting like Mark Carney is the second coming of Churchill, which he basically called himself a couple of weeks ago, when he hasn't delivered a single meaningful victory since being elected? Well, today we're going to actually get to the heart of this question. We're going to explore a very important question in Canada, and that is whether Canada is becoming a state run media environment. Not in name, of course, but perhaps in function. And when you follow the money, you follow the mandates, and you follow the messaging, what you're about to find is disturbing. Let's go.
Welcome to Bakes on Things.
Welcome back to Bakes on Things. Thanks for liking and subscribing. Don't forget to comment down below. Loving these conversations I'm having with you guys. When people hear state-run media, they picture Russia's RT or China's CCTV, big government-controlled TV stations broadcasting pure propaganda. And sure, as a country, Canada's not quite there yet, but let's be clear. State-run media is not just about who owns the building, it's about who controls the narrative. And right now, who might that be? See, if the media depends on the government for funding, well, if journalists are afraid to ask real questions because their paycheck might disappear, well, if stories that criticize the ruling party get buried or reframed into harmless fluff, well, you've already lost your free press. And that's where Canada is heading. A media class that survives by serving power but not challenging that same power. And we've seen this happen in this country before. Here's Exhibit A, the $595 million media bailout. So if we start back in 2019 with this media bailout, Justin Trudeau rolled out a $595 million bailout package to support journalism. Now that sounds noble, doesn't it? Until you realize how it works. The government created a new category of media outlets called Qualified Canadian Journalism Organizations. Now, that's code for outlets that play nice, get paid. That's the reality. Search the term. The bailout gave payroll subsidies, tax breaks, and funding to these approved outlets. Who approved them? Oh, right, a panel with connections to the very media companies getting the money themselves. Major newspapers like the Toronto Star, La Presse, and even the Globe and Mail all cashed in. Now, here's the issue. When you rely on government support to survive, you are no longer incentivized to speak the truth to the power that gave you that money. You're incentivized instead to keep that power happy. Now, after that, coverage shifted noticeably, didn't it? I mean, we all noticed it. Investigative pieces into liberal scandals started to disappear on all of these networks. Opinion sections read like liberal policy briefings, and the public, rightfully, started to lose a bit of trust in media. Because a press funded by the state is a press that fears the state. Okay, but if that wasn't a big enough example for you, let's go to Exhibit B, the CBC receiving $1.2 billion and counting. Because if we now talk about the biggest elephant in the room, and that's our Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, who gets more than $1.2 billion every single year from taxpayers, well, that's not even any kind of a typo or a misspeak on my part. That is what they receive. That's not one-time pandemic money, by the way. That's not a bailout. That is annual, institutional, multi-generational funding. Now ask yourself, do you think an organization that depends on the federal government for its very existence is ever going to go hard after that same government? Ever? Would you? I mean, would you? CBC used to have a proud legacy. Decades ago, it challenged governments of all stripes. But those days are long gone. Today, CBC is the unofficial PR wing of the Liberal Party. It buried major stories like the SNC Lavalin affair until it couldn't be buried anymore. It framed the We Charity scandal as complicated instead of corrupt. It parroted the government's economic talking points word for word through the pandemic and now into the Carney era. And under Carney, CBC isn't just compliant, it's enthusiastic. They act like they work at the Department of Narrative Affairs. Worse, they use our tax dollars to defend the government's record, even online, responding to criticism on social media with fact check threads that might as well be written by the Prime Minister's office itself. And now people are quitting on them because of it. That's not journalism. That's state broadcasting. Full stop, Mark. All right, that's not enough. Exhibit C, COVID funding and advertising bias. Do you remember this? Because there was the pandemic years. We all want to forget them, but the reality is that during COVID, the government launched a massive PR campaign. It was funded entirely with your tax dollars to promote its lockdowns, mandates, and public health messaging. Now, here's the thing. In doing so, they dumped tens of millions of dollars in advertising onto media outlets. But here's the kicker. Those dollars were not distributed evenly. Did you know that part? Outlets that parroted the government's line, that supported them, and didn't show any sign of supporting the truckers either, they were showered in ad revenue, sometimes receiving 6 or 7 figures in government cash, while others didn't receive even close to that. Independent outlets, including conservative voices or those that questioned the narrative, they were either shut out and completely ignored or just basically starved, given very little to go on. This wasn't about saving journalism in any way during the pandemic. This was about creating a filter, a pay-to-play media club where only government-approved voices got to survive. And it almost worked. Much of the independent media now is sitting here on YouTube. In 2021 and 2022, stories that question lockdowns, vaccine mandates, or government overreach were labeled as dangerous, disinformation, or anti-science. The public debate narrowed dramatically, and dissent was delegitimized. And the media? Well, they helped carry that whole plan out. Well, again, if you're not quite there yet, Exhibit D. Right now, Mark Carney's new era, of soft control. And now we arrive at that today. A man who calls himself a global leader, former central banker, a WEF golden boy, and now Prime Minister of Canada. Since taking office in April 2025, we know this, right? Carney has expanded the media control apparatus, adding new layers of fact-checking, foreign influence monitoring, and taxpayer-funded public education initiatives. That sounds suspiciously like reputation laundering, doesn't it? One of his first moves was creating a disinformation response center. Do we remember this? Inside Heritage Canada. Its job? Monitor and report on threats to democracy. Well, what's the threat to democracy, Mark? What does that include? Criticism of government policy, criticism of climate targets, criticism of international institutions. He's also quietly ramped up funding for CBC and exploring more direct grants to digital-first media that will support him. In short, Carney is building a 21st century propaganda machine quietly. Slicker, smarter, and harder to detect than ever before. It's not that journalists are being ordered to cover for him. They don't need to. It's that the system is now engineered to reward obedience and punish dissent. All right. So here's the thing. Historical comparisons are great. I mean, this has happened in the past. We've already just been through a few of these examples. But you might be wondering, has Canada ever gone through what we're going through right now, where the media is really paid off? And the answer is sort of, but never this far. Under Pierre Trudeau, the media fawned over him. They celebrated his intellect and charisma. But even then, there was real scrutiny, especially in the West. Western alienation was born in part because media bias was so bloody obvious. Under Stephen Harper, the media was mostly hostile, especially CBC. Harper slashed CBC's funding. He didn't try to control the press, he wanted less of it, and that got him labeled as anti democratic. Under Justin Trudeau, the transformation began. He launched the media bailout. He made cash flow dependent on compliance, and he opened the floodgates for friendly coverage. That's when the line began to really blur. But under Mark Carney, the line is practically gone. This isn't just about partisan preference anymore. This is about institutional capture, pardon me. This is about the pull and the full integration of media into the machinery of power. And the public? Well, most don't even see it happening. They just turn on the 6 o'clock news, turn it off at 7. So is this really truly state-run media? Well, if we answer the original question, is Canada's media state-run? The answer is technically no, it's not. But functionally, absolutely it is. So look at it this way. Most major media outlets in this country cannot survive without government help. What does that mean then? That's not a theory, that's just the math we have to use in this country. And in exchange for that support, they have softened their tone, narrowed their narratives, and adopted the government's worldview as their default setting. Now, this is more dangerous than classic propaganda from years ago because it hides behind the language of free press and fact-based journalism. This is what they continue to try and call this. It presents itself as the truth when it's actually a funded narrative. And if we don't recognize this transformation for what it is, we'll lose the ability to know when we're being manipulated. All right, let's wrap this up because I know this episode's getting long. All right, let's wrap this up because I know this episode's getting long. What do we do now? We stop trusting legacy media by default, just by default. We stop assuming the CBC is the voice of Canada because it's not. It's the voice of the ruling class. We support independent voices like these ones all on YouTube, like platforms, podcasts, substackers, and creators who are willing to speak uncomfortable truths. We demand full transparency about which media outlets get how much federal money. We demand that journalists disclose when they're being paid by the government that they're covering. And that means their network too, not just them personally. And when we push for media independence to be restored, not just by defunding propaganda, but by creating an environment where journalism can actually challenge power again. Because here's the thing. If we let Mark Carney turn our media into a megaphone for elite ideology, and again, it's not just Mark, it's the entire liberal government, Canada will still have newspapers, reporters, anchors, and debates, but we won't actually have journalism, if you understand what I mean. And we definitely won't have the truth. That we know. All right, if you made it this far into this episode, first and foremost, thank you. I know it's not a positive spin on things that might happen this week, but this is kind of the conversation the mainstream refuses to have, and now you know why. And this week, it's going to get much worse when we fail at these negotiations with the U.S. If you want more independent analysis like this, please hit subscribe. What I want you to do, though, is share this particular episode and leave a comment below. I want you to tell me, what's one example where the Canadian media clearly protected the Liberals or Mark Carney when they should have exposed them? Examples you've seen, that you've actually caught in the media. Thanks so much for watching Bakes on Things. We're not going to just expose the cracks in the system. We're going to rip the whole facade down. Keep tuning in. Keep joining us every week and every day, really, and keep making comments below because that conversation is making a difference. We'll catch you tomorrow.